Everyone dreamed of conquering Antarctica, but one man wanted to do something no human had ever achieved before. In 1914, British explorer Ernest Shackleton set sail aboard the wooden ship Endurance. His mission sounded almost impossible: become the first person to cross the entire Antarctic continent from coast to coast. More than 24 experienced sailors joined him, believing they were about to make history. At first, everything went according to plan. The sea was calm, the crew remained confident, and the great white continent slowly appeared on the horizon. But Antarctica had its own plans. As Endurance entered the Weddell Sea, the floating ice became thicker every day. Massive ice floes surrounded the ship from every direction. Progress slowed to a crawl, then stopped completely. The crew watched as the frozen ocean quietly closed around them like a giant trap. They had traveled thousands of kilometers to reach Antarctica. They had no idea they would soon become prisoners of the ice. At first, the crew believed the ice would eventually break apart. They waited for hours, then for days. But nothing changed. Every morning, the frozen sea looked even thicker than before. Soon, Endurance was completely trapped. The engines were useless. The sails could no longer help. The ship couldn't move even a single meter. For weeks, the men watched endless fields of white ice stretching to the horizon. Temperatures kept falling. The freezing wind never stopped. Still, Ernest Shackleton refused to give up. Every day he kept the crew busy with work, exercise, and strict routines. He knew that if hope disappeared, fear would take its place. But deep beneath the frozen surface, the Antarctic ice was slowly tightening its grip around Endurance. The real nightmare had only just begun. For months, the pressure kept growing. The ice never stopped moving. Day after day, enormous frozen sheets pushed against Endurance with incredible force. At first, the crew barely noticed the change. The ship creaked and groaned like an old tree in the wind. Then the sounds became louder. Heavy cracks echoed through the wooden hull day and night. Massive beams slowly bent under the crushing weight of the Antarctic ice. The men rushed onto the deck, watching in silence as their ship twisted a little more every single day. No engine could move her. No sail could save her. The ice was simply too powerful. Ernest Shackleton understood what was happening before anyone else. Endurance was dying. He ordered every man to stay calm and begin unloading food, fuel, scientific equipment, warm clothing, and the 3 lifeboats onto the frozen sea. Every crate might soon mean the difference between life and death. They had crossed the world aboard this ship. Now they were preparing to watch her disappear forever. The pressure became too much. On October 27, 1915, Ernest Shackleton made the hardest decision of the entire expedition. He gave the order to abandon Endurance. The crew climbed down onto the frozen sea, carrying only food, warm clothing, equipment, and the 3 lifeboats. Behind them, their ship remained trapped in the endless Antarctic ice. For days, they watched in silence as the wooden hull slowly broke apart. Massive beams snapped one after another. The deck collapsed. Freezing seawater poured deep inside the ship. Every loud crack echoed across the empty white wilderness. Every sound reminded them there was no way back. Endurance had carried them safely across thousands of miles. Now they could do nothing except watch her die. On November 21st, the exhausted crew stood together as the ship finally disappeared beneath the Antarctic ice forever. From that moment, 28 men were completely alone. No ship, no shelter, no rescue, only endless ice, and the impossible fight to stay alive. The ice became their new home. There were no cabins, no warm beds, no walls to protect them from the freezing Antarctic wind. The crew built a small camp beside the 3 lifeboats using tents, sails, and every piece of equipment they had managed to save from Endurance. Every day followed the same routine. They hunted seals and penguins for food. They melted clean ice for drinking water. They repaired clothing, checked their supplies, and tried to keep their spirits alive. Weeks passed without a single rescue ship. The endless white horizon never changed. Shackleton refused to let hopelessness spread through the camp. He gave every man a job. Some hunted, some cooked, some repaired equipment. Others cared for the camp. He believed that discipline was just as important as food. As long as every man had a purpose, hope would survive. But one morning, loud cracks echoed beneath the camp. The ice beneath their feet was beginning to break apart. The ice beneath the camp was no longer safe. Every day, new cracks spread farther across the frozen surface. Shackleton knew that if they stayed any longer, the ice would eventually break apart beneath them. He gave the order to launch the 3 lifeboats. The crew loaded every crate of food, every tool, every blanket, and every piece of equipment they had managed to save. Nothing could be left behind. Working together, they pushed the heavy wooden boats across the rough Antarctic ice until they finally reached the freezing water. One by one, the lifeboats entered the Southern Ocean. The freezing wind struck their faces immediately. Towering waves lifted the small boats high into the air before crashing them back down again. Floating ice surrounded them from every direction. Freezing seawater soaked their clothes hour after hour. Their hands became numb. Their bodies grew weaker every day. But Shackleton refused to surrender. He believed that somewhere beyond the endless grey ocean, there was still hope. And he was determined to bring every one of his men home. After days of fighting the freezing Southern Ocean, the exhausted men finally reached Elephant Island. For the first time in almost 500 days, they stood on solid ground. But their relief lasted only a few moments. No ships ever sailed this far south. No one even knew where they were. If they remained on the island, every one of them would eventually die. Ernest Shackleton refused to accept that fate. He chose 5 of his strongest men and prepared the toughest lifeboat, James Caird. Their destination was South Georgia, more than 1,300 kilometers away, across one of the most dangerous oceans on Earth. Towering waves crashed over the tiny boat day and night. Freezing wind cut through their soaked clothing. Every hour felt like a fight against death. But turning back meant there was no hope at all. Before leaving, Shackleton looked at the men staying behind and made a promise. No matter how long it took, no matter what happened on the journey, he would come back for every one of them. After 16 days at sea, James Caird finally reached South Georgia. But the journey was not over. The tiny boat landed on the wrong side of the island. Between Shackleton and the whaling station stood towering mountains, deep glaciers, and ground that no one had ever crossed before. Without a map, without a guide, Shackleton and 2 companions began the impossible climb. For more than 36 exhausting hours, they crossed icy peaks, frozen rivers, and dangerous cliffs without stopping to sleep. At last, they saw the whaling station below. The workers could hardly believe their eyes. They thought Shackleton had died long ago, but he had returned. His first words were simple. "My name is Shackleton." After several failed rescue attempts blocked by sea ice, he refused to give up. On August 30th, 1916, he finally reached Elephant Island. Every single man was still alive. Against all odds, Ernest Shackleton brought every one of his men home